Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with Grammy Award-winning jazz trombonist Doug Beavers. We had a wide-ranging talk about his latest 2020 CD, Soul, and a long, fruitful life in jazz. He is a musician who fearlessly pushes the boundaries of genre, and it all started with Eddie Palmieri's legendary La Perfecta band, and he moved on to the Spanish Harlem Orchestra and many stops along the way. He's got a great past, a wonderful future. Hope is abound. Enjoy.
When the sun's shining, it always makes everything a little better.
You could say that again. Yeah. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm good, man. Thanks for taking a minute out for the show. I appreciate it.
Of course, my pleasure.
Your latest CD comes out during a very strange time on planet Earth. Talk to me a little bit about the timing of this release, if anything was altered because of being in a pandemic and everything that's going on.
Definitely, I had planned to bring Soul out. And it was always, I mean, obviously it was going to be a summer record. You know, when we wanted that record to come out May, June 2020 at the latest. That was the idea of it. Just with the, you know, we had recorded 8 tunes in December 19, and then the whole thing, you know, hit around March. You know, and I still needed to go to the studio to cut 4 more. And guys were just pretty reluctant, and you know, rightfully so, for going to the studio and recording, and you know, because I like to record my stuff live, you know, so they were definitely hesitating, and I don't blame them. Anyway, make that long story short, we finally fast forward to July 20, and we got done recording everything. I mixed and mastered it in August, and then it comes out in September. But still, it was, you know, the whole thing definitely threw a loop into it, and we ended up releasing in December, which is the complete opposite of summer. But I can't complain because it's been well received.
Well, and I think that's the thing that's interesting about this. You know, when all of this started, it was like, you know, we can't perform live, so you know, it's a bummer. But now it's like this is one of the only ways that you can get in front of your fan base is to actually put new material out.
Oh, that's absolutely true, and for me it was an added blessing too, because I had with Soul, I wanted to start my record label, which is Circle 9 Records, which was actually a production company too. It's a way to bring more music to my fans, and you know, and it's almost, you know, the way I look at it right now, we've sold, and the vinyl, by the way, it comes out in a week or so, and we pre-sold a third of our entire inventory of vinyls even before it gets here. So people are super hungry for the music, and in ways, I mean, we've had more success. I mean, certainly just in terms of just units sold and the reception and everything, we've done way better with this. And we haven't even performed a CD release show, which is just amazing. And people are, you know, it tells me that, you know, one of my things is make sure that the music is accessible, make sure it's of high, you know, production value, make sure it's of high musical value. People want real, good, truthful stuff from the heart, and that will always be the case. And we found a way to bring that directly to people, and people are really, you know, I think they really get that vibe from us, and that's what we're about.
So speaking of a really good, you know, soulful, truthful sound, what do you ultimately want the listener to get from this experience? I mean, there's so much that gets put into any album, but on this particular album with everything, I mean, you have parts of that pandemic time that go into this, pre-pandemic. There's a lot that goes into this. It represents sunshine. Talk to me a little bit about what you want the listener to get.
Yeah, I just the listener, I would love for them to understand that, you know, these lines that folks draw with genre. Oh, you know, and people for many years, he's a Latin guy, even though, you know, my degree from Manhattan School of Music is in jazz composition. You know, I came up learning jazz from the greats. You know, but people say, oh, well, he said, but then I worked with Eddie Palmieri. That's kind of how I got my start in the, you know, quote unquote major leagues. So now he's a Latin guy. You know, so what which is, I mean, yeah, I do specialize in that music, but the scope is so much broader of what I do, and that's part of the reason why I started this label too, is to bring some of that scope forward. So when folks are listening to this record, I really want them to see how seamlessly these different kind of streams of thought in music, and actually with respect to genre, how they flow into the music pretty seamlessly, if you think about it like that. You know, with soul, we have a lick that starts off from a tune from Maze called Golden Light of Day. That flows into like a salsa, and then it gets into like a heavy Puerto Rico kind of mambo section. And then we put a soul singer who actually performed with Roberta Flack and Chaka Khan, Ada Dyer. So we meld all these things, and it seamlessly works. You know, so what are you going to call it? Is it a salsa record? Well, not really. Is it an R&B record? Definitely not. Is it a jazz record? No. So it's its own thing. Music can still grow, and I think with an open mind, we can make it whatever we want. And that was the goal with this. And I also wanted to introduce 12 original compositions. Now, we're definitely taking influences of styles, but 12 original compositions of my own pen, and commit them to a record. And that was my goal. And I think people, you know, going back to that whole honesty thing, I think people really, they'll connect to it. And, you know, I know that's the case when they hear this music. You know, I know that they're going to hear these influences blending together. It's like, wow, I never would think about that. Because we do it in a different way than was in the 70s or the 80s, you know, where it was just like, okay, here's a Latin thing, and then here's a, you know, blah, blah, blah. It was very kind of categorical. But here, I think we're really seamlessly blending these influences in a new way. So I think that's the takeaway from this record is how that's possible. And if that's possible, anything's possible.
So speaking of influences, talk to me a little bit about your childhood. How did all of this begin? How did you get enamored with music, and how did it take off into a career?
Specifically, like the R&B and soul music was always played around my house. My dad's, you know, African-American, born in South Central L.A. Met my mom, who's actually from Spain. They were going way back, perhaps more back than I should. But just real quickly, they met in Spain. My dad was in the Air Force, okay, and he was a sergeant. He was stationed out in Torrejon Air Force Base, which is in Madrid. They would go on weekends. They would go into town, and they would go to discotheques, and they would pick up chicks. Picked up my mom. 2 years later, I'm born. Right, so that's how that happened. Yeah. So listening, you know, and then, you know, my mom moved here, and so we would listen to that music, you know, kind of, you know, on the weekends and stuff, and I just came up listening to that. Now, childhood-wise, I never intended to be a musician. Like, I always thought I was going to be some kind of engineer. So I actually studied, you know, electrical engineering. I had a full ride to UC Davis to be an electrical engineer. On the way there, John Coltrane's Crescent comes on, you know, and I had been studying music hardcore, just as much. That comes on the public radio, and I just had an emotional moment. I'm like, yo, I can't do this. You know, I have to do music. You know, that was the gods, you know, John Coltrane is certainly one of them, telling me, turn that car around and go pursue music, see what happens. And that's what I did. I literally turned the car around and went. There was a great music program at California State University, Hayward. Went there, got accepted on the spot. I obviously had enough science and math and all that. And then that's where it took off. I did 3 years there and then came to New York. And that was, you know, and while I was in the Bay Area, that's where I was raised, basically, San Francisco Bay Area, I did a ton of just horn bands and salsa bands, R&B stuff, wedding gigs. So I was, you know, transcribing and arranging plenty back then. And then, you know, as I came up through Manhattan School of Music, my teacher was Conrad Herwig, a great trombonist, you know, one of our best, and he introduces me to Eddie Palmieri, and I transcribed a record called La Perfecta 2, and that was released on Concord in 2000. And that was really the start of it. Then I found myself on tour with Eddie Palmieri, learning from the greats. I was like, all 22, 23, shivering in my shimmies on stage, but that's how you learn. That's how you learn. You know, that was just an indispensable experience. And here we are. You know, and now I'm finding those analytical engineering skills really coming to the fore, full circle, because now I'm engineering my own music, producing it. You know, I mix my stuff. And continue to really grow along the production aspects, you know, because I get the physics of it. So it's really interesting how it's come full circle for me.
You know, when I think about mentors in your life, you know, you've been around a lot of heavy cats, but Eddie had to be probably one of the first ones that probably had a huge lasting impact. What did you learn from him? How did you learn? What were the things that helped you conduct the life the way you do now?
Yeah, Eddie, I learned from Eddie, I mean, amongst other things, really the singular dynamic was the dynamics of a live performance. And Eddie Palmieri was always about capturing and captivating the audience's attention. Like, he always wanted the audience engaged, still does, once we get playing here. And he's not too far. He's like 5 minutes, 10 minutes north of me here in Jersey. But what I learned was, we always respect the audience, and he always wanted them to be excited. And that's something that I really, I took within, and when we perform with my own ensembles, I utilize just those dynamics about, and what he calls a trajectory. And what he means by that is, okay, the band can start here, then we're going to do this intro, and so the trajectory's up, and then we're going to have the singers do the verse, and then we're going to do a piano solo, so that's raising the trajectory, that's raising the tension, and then we're going to hit you with the mambo, then, which is the big instrumental section in the middle, then we're going to hit you with the moña. So that trajectory of energy is really, if you think about it, it's constantly heading up. And when you really utilize these techniques, and he got a lot of this from the Schillinger system, which is a mathematical interpretation of music. I don't know if you listeners might know about that, but that's, that was, he's studied those books. He showed me the books. He's got everything highlighted there, and he's really taken into that. When you peak, the audience goes crazy, and they just want more and more. And being on the stage with Eddie, that's really what I experienced. The audience would just go crazy, and so I really, not only when I perform, but even when I write too, I'm always trying to keep that trajectory up, trying to keep the audience engaged, captivated. And, when you learn, those are things that they don't teach in school. When I went to high school music or whatever, I learned a lot, but you don't get that kind of in the trench type of experience as you do performing with a master. So, I mean, that's really the singular thing. I learned with Eddie, and also, I found myself in the studio with Michael Brecker in 2005 for that release, Listen Here, and it was Regina Carter and Giovanni Hidalgo and like Christian McBride and all these greats. So just being surrounded by greatness, you get to experience what these musicians have sacrificed and what they've been through to be truly great. And that, without Eddie, that was, at that time in my life, that wasn't going to be possible. But that was, really blessed to have had that experience with him.
So when you take all of those experiences with these heavy hitters in jazz, and you translate into that teaching the younger generation, what did you get from them that in turn helped you teach the younger generation?
It flows right into that. There's a certain intensity, I think, that we need to teach, our people who are coming up in music, and when I teach, and to take the stuff seriously. I recently went to a couple of years in a row. Well, last year I went to TMEA. I think some of you being close to Texas, your listeners might know about this, but it's the Texas Music Educators Association. They have a gigantic conference, and there's all kinds of instruments and dealers and marching band uniforms and cymbals. I mean, it's a barn, full of stuff. But as part of that, I would, as for my company, Antoine Courtois Trombones, I would go and do some clinics. And, when I go in, the kids are just kind of like, okay, it's another day, it's the routine. We're going to take this music and we're just going to read it down. But it's not that. It's like, let's take this music. Let's create something new with it. Yeah, it might be the same piece. We're learning how to play. But let's put energy into it. Let's really, like the articulation, let's put excitement into every line and commit to everything. And you work up the students like you would work up your audience in front of Eddie's, or in front of one of my performances, or in front of Spanish Harlem Orchestra's performances or whatever. You inject, and you have to put a lot of energy into when you teach, but that comes out on their end. And you'll hear a band or a whatever it might be in their performance, you hear that energy kind of transmuted through the ether to them, and so they perform with that vigor. and that kind of sense of desperation, because that's what this has to be. You never know what happens tomorrow, Joe. Like, who knows? With all the things going on in the world. So you really do, they say, it's cliche, you have to perform like it's your last day on earth, but it is really true. And so when you teach and when you're showing, you have to just have, as I was able to experience it, when you teach kids coming up today or whomever you're teaching, it could be somebody that's 70, you have to show them that, you really take it seriously and you put a lot of dedication in, and you show them what it takes to be a great musician. Because being a musician is hard enough, but to be a great one, I mean, that's some serious sacrifice there. So that's really what I like to instill as I teach.
Every day you wake up as a creator and a musician, what do you look forward to the most? What is it about being in this profession and this line of work that you look forward to the most?
Yeah, honestly, Joe, it's as of late and with this whole unfortunate pandemic, it's really given me a chance to stay home and really hone different aspects and really focus on them, like compositional techniques for sure. But the thing that really gets me excited right now is the production aspect, recording and working on mixing techniques and really, like, I'm a fan of, those old kind of smooth, I guess they're old now, but like people would laugh, like smooth jazz records, like Foreplay and Earl Klugh and, like Don Sebesky records and stuff from CTI and that stuff kind of along that vein, because if you listen to the sonic clarity, the purity, I mean, the recording is just really second to none. And so I've been here just really trying to experiment with different things and see, how my music can achieve that type of clarity. So I've really been excited to write the music, first of all, every note of it. I've done a ton of arranging, but now I'm doing more and more composition and showing the world how I think about music, how I think about the music through composition. But then taking that, realizing that, and then tailoring the sounds kind of aspect to what my sonic vision is. And taking that, through the whole entire process from conception all the way to a master. So I'm really intrigued by that. I love playing, trombone, and I'm looking right at it, and it needs my attention every day. And but really that whole establishing that whole sonic picture from beginning to end is really what gets you. I rush out of bed in the morning and I'm at the workstation learning and practicing a lot of piano, so I could facilitate a lot of that stuff. So that's where I'm at right now.
So if you have a dream tonight, you run into your younger self right around the time you were getting ready to start becoming a professional, and you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
It would be to focus my time more on what matters, really find your voice, put your artistic self first, even though when you're young and you're fledgling, you have to take kind of every opportunity or most of them. But I really found myself being pulled in all sorts of different directions, because I was a freelance artist. I would be working this, be playing an R&B thing, I'd be doing a jazz gig, I'd be whatever. And that stuff would drain me, but I would tell myself to really focus your time and take some time to really think about what you have to offer musically. Not arranging, but compose. I've always been able to hear music pretty well. What do you have to offer? Compose it, practice it, and I think I would have liked to have done that sooner to be on this tip that I'm out on now. But hey, that's the way it goes, and when you're younger, it is your role to learn from the greats. It is your role to really take that in and have those experiences while you have youth on your side. So I think that's what I would mention to my younger self.
So, going back to that world that we knew last year before the pandemic happened, what do you miss the most from that old world? What are you looking forward to getting back to?
I miss socializing with the cats. Absolutely. I miss going and meeting up with the guys and seeing what's going on in their world, or just hanging out after a gig and getting with a group of guys, and they might be talking about a project they're doing, like, call me up, and just that social aspect that, let's be honest, you can't get via Zoom or any other of these online meetings. Just being in this spontaneous, group of folks, especially like in New York. After a gig, like, oh, we're going to go to the Zinc Bar. Okay, so let's all get in a cab and let's go over there. And then you run into, like, other folks. And so you just end up socializing, and that whole dynamic, I really love, or just being at a cafe or something outside, and running into somebody randomly, that what's going on? And just like those New York, we call them New York moments, they happen everywhere, but they really happen here often because the population is so densely packed. I really miss that aspect of it. Now, working to 3 a.m, that's going to end for me. I'm not going to be doing that anymore if I could all help it, because I do like getting up and having, being focused and being alert enough to really turn the page and learn something. But that whole social aspect is what I really love about it, and it'll be back.
So what do you hope the audience and musician realizes about this long time away from live music? Maybe silver linings, realizations that we all have.
The value of it, the value of coming together and putting, certainly if you're in the audience, putting kind of your everyday trials and tribulations, putting those aside and joining an audience and kind of listening with rapt attention as to what you're experiencing together, and that whole emotional ride that you take with a band as you're listening. That, it's just not the same. Looking, there's these live online things. I'm not such a big fan. It's just, you don't have that connection with people in the room. Human beings were meant to be together. We're not meant to be in these vestibules and cubicles so I think we really need to cherish that experience. We need to put value on that. We also need to put value on what we do as musicians and in the music, and put value on musicians themselves, any artist, because they do offer a significant foil, because people can't just do STEM every day in science, and that's the end of it, and then they play a video game, and we need culture to balance everything out. And I think as musicians, we're in charge of the emotions. I want with my records for people, especially with my last one, for people to get up in the morning and to put a smile on their face. So we're kind of engineering happiness along those lines, and that's, I think we really needed to put a significant value, just as in Europe and Germany and everywhere else, they put a significant value on the work of artists, and I really think we should do so here in the States as well.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, students, but you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
Yeah, I mean, finally, as of late, I feel like I'm the person I'm meant to be. A musician who's actually really found themselves in the production aspect and the composition aspect, and is really focused in making that happen. And not only that, really focused on establishing a community via my label Circle 9, the records that we're working on right now, that we're gonna release, that show a segment of our culture that people I don't think necessarily were aware of. And it's not just Latin jazz, as I mentioned earlier, but it's kind of, all like it's like a New York kind of thing right now. We actually have an artist from Melbourne, Australia, who's going to come aboard too. But I'm not really generally concerned as I used to be about people's perception of what I do and who I am. But I know that I found myself in what I'm doing, and I'm confident in what I'm doing, and I know it's me. I know it's Doug Beavers, and when you have that confidence, things start to really align in the universe, and folks' perceptions, like, wow, he's absolutely sure about what he's doing, or whoever it might be. So, I've never felt sure in my life about my direction, and I think that comes off, and that's something I'm really excited about. And it's just, for me, it's kind of almost the beginning. There's so many records I want to make, ideas, so many collaborations with artists, and so many records I want to bring out there. You know, I'm really excited to get it rolling, especially now that seems that we might be able to work in earnest pretty soon here. But we're on the south end of this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Doug, thank you, man. I appreciate you opening up, and good luck with the album and the return to the stage.
Hey, great questions.
Thank you.
Really thoughtful. I'm like, okay, all right. I'm gonna have to think of a worthy answer to this. But thanks for your time, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in L.A., New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Doug for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.